Hello, my name is Matthew Turner. I'm a licensed automotive service technician, and today I'd like to share with you some common snags that you might run into when changing your tires at home. Now, just to be clear, this video is not an instructional video on how to change your tires or a video outlining the safety precautions that you should already know if you're attempting to do this job at home. This is more of a, what happens when the hits the fan while you're doing this. So I'm going to run through a hypothetical situation, basically where all the bad things happen at once. This does happen sometimes. It's more common in the rust belts of the country, where I'm from. So let's just say that you've got your vehicle jacked up, you're about to take the wheels off, and this is what happens. Okay, now you begin taking your lug nuts off with that nice new impact gun that you've recently purchased. So you take 3 of them off, and the 4th one you realize, oh, that's weird, the socket actually doesn't fit on top of the nut. You try and rattle it on there, but instead of taking the nut off, it kind of just strips it even further. So what do you do now? This is what you might be seeing in front of you. Of course, these wheel nuts have already been removed off the car, but as you can see, the edges of the nut have been rounded out. And if you look closely at that center nut, you can see that the outer portion, the shell, is actually broken off. So this is a real difficult situation to get yourself out of. Now the situation can get a lot worse. Looking at this picture here, this is an example of a lug nut that someone tried to weld to give themselves something to grab onto to loosen that nut off, and in doing so they basically just ruined the rim, the stud, and the nut. Here's another view of what's actually happening with the lug nut. As you can see, the outside edge has swelled up. This is because that outer chrome shell is being pushed out from the inside by the steel core of that nut, which is rusting. And in doing so, it makes it so the socket doesn't fit tightly on top of that nut or fit at all. So how do we get these lug nuts off if our socket won't fit on top of them anymore? Here's an example of a strip lug nut socket kit. This has special sockets that have teeth that grab the outside edge. Now they only work in removing the nut, they actually don't work in installing, but chances are you may not have this kit. As you can see here, this guy is hammering on a socket onto the nut. Most likely the socket is a size up or a size down depending on the deformation of the nut or the shell. So this is great for getting the socket on tight, as well as breaking up the rust that might be inside the threads. Okay, success. You got the nut off. That's great. That was the first obstacle you had to get through. Now, you go to pull the wheel off and realize that the wheel is stuck on the hub. All the nuts are off, but the wheel still won't come off the car. What do you do now? An easy first step that you can take to get the wheel off the car would be to utilize some penetrating fluid between the stud and the holes of the rim. This is going to help lubricate the surfaces, and if you have enough time, maybe even help break up some of that oxidation that's locking the wheel in place. For the next step, you need a hammer and you need some kind of a buffer. As you can see here, we've got a piece of 2x4. This is going to just protect the rim, protect the tire from the hammer. So you're going to basically hit the wood on top of the wheel with some considerable force. This is going to break away that rust and that oxidation between the wheel and the hub, hopefully jarring it loose. Okay, great. Congratulations. You've got the wheel off. We're just about halfway there. So in front of you, you're looking at your wheel hub, and you can see this crusty, oxidized surface. So this is what you've been fighting to try and get your wheel off. This will have to be remedied, so we're going to have to clean this off next. So in this picture, we can see someone using a 90-degree die grinder with a buffing pad attached. This does a quick job of cleaning up the hub. Possibly you don't have this tool. In that case, you could use a metal file or a steel brush, even a screwdriver. Basically, you want to break away any high spots, any crusty bits on the hub, and as well on the back of the wheel. It's this mating surface between the wheel and the hub that's crucial. So again, make sure that you've stripped away any crusty, oxidized bits on these two surfaces. Not only does this help the wheel coming off and on, but it ensures that the wheel will stay tight on the car and it won't fall off. The reason the wheel can fall off is if those crusty oxidized bits, which are the yellow jagged pieces in this picture, if they are sandwiched in between the wheel and the hub on installation and then break away as you're driving, all of a sudden you have a gap between your wheel and your hub. And with a gap, you have looseness, and that wheel can actually work itself loose. Alright, so the wheel and the hub are all cleaned up. Now it's time to put the wheel back on. Obviously, your stripped out, swelled lug nut is not going to work anymore, so you're going to have to get yourself some new wheel nuts. These are fairly cheap and available in most auto parts stores. Now that the wheel's back on the car, lug nuts are snugged up, go ahead, torque your nuts to the vehicle manufacturer specifications using the star pattern. A little note I'll give you on this part is don't use any lubricants on the threads themselves. This is actually going to throw off the torque ratings of your nuts. You'll actually be tightening up, if you use lube, you'll be tightening up the nuts more than what you would be if the threads were dry. Oh no, what's happened here? We thought we did everything right. So keep in mind, this can happen. Your wheels still can come off after you've cleaned the hub, cleaned the wheel, torqued everything to spec. So what are we missing? What was the missing step that caused this wheel to fall off? Retorquing, or at least checking the torque of your lug nuts after about 100k of driving, is super important. Remember, even though you've cleaned the hub and the wheel, chances are it's not perfectly clean, and any little bits that might be stuck in between the two can still rattle away. And also just the force and the rattling and the vibrations of the road can cause your lug nuts to back off and create that looseness. And that's it. Thank you for listening to my presentation on the snags that you could run into while doing your tires at home. Please feel free to comment or share your experiences, things that I may have missed and things that you've run into yourselves. I look forward to reading them. Thank you.